Hi everyone, my name is Anna at Migrant Doctor Mom, and thank you so much for joining me today for yet another video. And today I'm just going to talk about, my best air travel tips. I aim today to give you tips so that you can travel as a pro, even if it's your first time that you're traveling. And I'm mainly just going to use my experiences just so I give you a bit of, advice, tips, and, just talk about how you can travel really well and travel actually like a pro, even if it's the first time that you're traveling. So the biggest tip is always prioritize comfort. So when you're traveling and you're traveling by air, it's quite important to prioritize, how comfortable you are. Not, I'm saying this, but also bearing in mind that, you need to travel comfortably, but also in a smart way. Okay. So when I first started traveling, obviously, being the first time that I was traveling, I enjoy wearing my jeans, my belts, but then, the inconveniences that comes with having a belt on, when you pass through immigration, the checkpoints and stuff like that. And you always have to remove, your belts. You always have to, sometimes, when you're wearing big earrings, you have to remove them as well. So quite important to prioritize comfort by ensuring that you're wearing all the right clothes. And when I talk about right clothes, I'm talking about, a smart casual, or wearing a good pair of, sweatpants, wearing loafers, or wearing, flat, nice shoes that are quite comfortable, especially if you're doing a long distance flight. Like, for example, if you're doing 10 hours, 12 hours, or even more, because some flights may take you up to, like 16 hours and stuff like that. So very important to ensure you're comfortable, but at the same time that you're well dressed. And I insist on the well-dressed bit because I just came to realize that sometimes airlines may actually upgrade you to business class or first class or something like that. And one of the things that you sort of need to be, appropriately dressed for business class or appropriately dressed for first class. So very important to ensure that you are well-dressed for comfort, but also at the same time, you never know. It could just be that it's your day to get upgraded, and you don't want them not to upgrade you just because you're wearing you're wearing inappropriately. Okay. So my second trip, essentially, that I have learned over time when I'm doing air travel, is to be mindful of what I'm putting in my carry-on luggage. So very important to ensure that you're not carrying large liquids. And by that I mean, nothing more than 200 mils. So for ladies, if you are having those large containers of perfume, and I've actually seen someone's, expensive perfumes being dunked at the airport, and that's not nice to start your travel. So it's very important to ensure that you're carrying small volumes. You're carrying, if you're carrying your moisturizer, which will be quite handy on the plane because you tend to get dry skin, you're ensuring that you're carrying a small amount, a small packaged amount to help with moisturizing. You're carrying small for scenting and stuff like that. So ensure that that's what you're doing, carrying small amounts of liquids, less than 200 mils. My third point is always, and this is something that I've experienced, flight food is flight food. Don't alight with flight food. And I'll give a story of a good friend of mine who, kids, you give them yogurt and they carry yogurt, and you don't even realize, because once you put them on the stroller, you don't realize you still have, the yogurt. And you get into border force here in Australia and they realize that your child is carrying yogurt. You've declared you don't have food, and true enough, you don't have all the forbidden, types of foods to bring in. And that's the truth. You don't have that. But as soon as they saw the son holding, that yogurt, it just prompted all her entire luggage to be looked at. And that's when they will say, oh, your normal packed beans are seeds and stuff like that. So you don't want to open up about, a can of worms where they'll start, looking at you more keenly. So leave the flight food on the flights. Leave your peanuts, leave your all the goodies that they give you on the plane. It's quite, I would highly advise, leave everything on the plane, and just don't forget those sandwiches that your parents pack, or that you buy, you know, as you at your layover, try and make sure that you leave all those sandwiches on the plane because of biosecurity laws that are quite stringent when you come into Australia, quite stringent, that there's some things that you cannot carry. And just to avoid, you know, the mishaps that could happen, just ensure that you're not carrying that. My fourth biggest tip when you're traveling by air, things like medications, especially if you're on opioids medications, very important to ensure that they are well labeled, they are in their containers. If you have a doctor's note, the better. And just ensure that if you're somebody that's on a big list of medications, that you have them all written down, all summarized by your doctor, and preferably if they're labeled. And the beauty of living in Australia is whenever you get your medications from the chemist or from, you know, wherever you get your medications from, they will be labeled with your name. They will have, you know, the dosing, and they tend to have the doctor who prescribed them for you. So very important to ensure if you're on medicinal, you know, cannabis and stuff like that, make sure that you have an attaching letter to show for that, because most times than not, if you're screened, you know, and they pick up something, then you can, you know, confidently say that these are the medications that I have, and prescription medications. Very important. Uh, and then the other thing that if you're traveling for the first time, and you know, every time that you travel, your checked-in luggage, you get you know, a label for it. I have found over time it's quite important to label your luggage very well to ensure that it's traceable. Like if your luggage for whatsoever reason is left in an airport, it's so much easier if it is well labeled with your name, preferably with the destination, and also always ensure whatever they give you, hang on to it. Because the first time that I traveled, I didn't actually realize that, you know, whatever they stick on they tend to stick it behind your boarding pass. And I didn't realize that that is what actually is attached also to your bag, so that, you know, if you are ever to lose them, you will require, if you are ever to lose your bags or not get them on time, you will require that information that they tend to stick at the back of your boarding pass to be able to easily chase up or follow up with your bags. So very important to make sure that your bags are traceable. Make sure that you label them really well. They have your name, preferably the address that you're coming into, and roughly, you know, your destination and your starting point of your journey. The other thing that I recently noticed, and I've traveled quite a few times, is that there is availability of Wi-Fi on board. I find that to be the best thing that I've discovered of late, because then with Wi-Fi on board, and you can buy various, you know, types, because you will notice that some of what you buy is not super expensive. It can give you even just, you know, you can tailor it to what you need. If you just want to talk to your loved ones via WhatsApp to say, oh, now we've boarded, a few more hours to go, I'm doing well, and also just to have a quick chat while you're mid-air, it's good to sign up for Wi-Fi on board. Obviously, with Wi-Fi on board being a public Wi-Fi, there's some things that I wouldn't recommend opening, like your bank stuff and, you know, things like that. But generally, just for communication with your loved ones, how you're going, how the flight is going, and stuff like that. Very important. Sometimes I wish we had this when we last traveled, because obviously one of us was unwell. And if I had realized that that is something that I could have done, maybe I would have communicated with my family waiting, just so that we know and probably plan appropriate, you know, transfer to hospital and stuff like that. So that's something that I discovered that I would highly recommend. Very cheap if it's just WhatsApp messages. Obviously, if you want more than that, there's an additional cost, but just generally being able to say, look, this is how we're going, would be a good idea. The other important thing that I would say is, you know, hydration. Quite, you know, make sure that you really hydrate. I don't know, sometimes I've traveled these long flights, and you know, your neighbor is just seated all through the flight. You're wondering, maybe get up and stretch your legs. stretch your legs, walk about the cabin a little bit, and especially for people that are at high risk of DVT, which is deep vein thrombosis, if you've had clots in your legs before and stuff like that. Obviously, things like compression stockings will help. Make sure that you're well hydrated. Make sure you're using your moisturizer well, because the cabin air tends to, make your skin really go dry, make you quite dehydrated as well. So make sure you're hydrating well. And look, you can always, ask for extra water from the cabin crew. I found it very, very helpful for me carrying my water bottle, because I board with it being empty, but mid-air I can go and fill it up at the crew can actually fill it up for you, and that way you just not feeling like inconveniencing them for asking for water over and over. But actually you can ask for as much water as you want, because obviously staying hydrated, staying well moisturized, walking around the cabin crew, exercising your legs by doing several exercises of your legs, quite important, and I can't recommend it enough. The other thing that I always find handy, and which is a very important air travel tip, is always have your documents handy. Have the best way. I don't know what's the best way. There are people that will do, sling bags. There are people that will do, handbags. There are people that will have cargo pants and stuff like that. Whatever it is that you do, or whatever is convenient for you, just ensure that they are highly, highly handy. And that is your passport and probably your travel visa, if you don't have a passport where they stamp the visa. So have a visa handy, have your passport quite handy as well. And obviously, I tend to, have a little bit of, where you're going and stuff like that. Some quick information that can come in handy, because every time, sometimes you may, as you exit and, you cross over, you may need to speak to immigration and stuff like that, and having that handy is quite important. Otherwise, having to take down your bags, go through all your bags to try and get your documents can just take a bit longer. So quite important to ensure that your documents are safe, but at the same time they're quite handy. The other thing that I would kindly or advocate for is travel insurance. The many times that I've traveled, I think there are a few travels that I've done without travel insurance. And it's because I've always thought, oh, we are young, we don't have any medical issues, we don't really need travel insurance and stuff like that. I can get airlifted back home and stuff like that. But as we travel more, I've realized that travel insurance is quite key. I think in our last big travel overseas, we found that travel insurance was quite helpful. It saved us quite a lot of funds when one of us was unwell. We ended up spending about 15 grand, and just the assurance of knowing that travel insurance would cater for us, bearing in mind that we'd not paid more than a grand for that travel insurance, and just being, that assurance of knowing that they would pay for the funds gave me so much peace of mind. Because look, you've traveled, you're not expecting to be sick on the way. You've set aside money for, for the activities that you're going to do, for the fun things that you're going to do. You don't put aside money that you're going to go into hospital. So when that eventuality actually happens, it's just nice knowing that you're covered for an illness, and that you can go to the best hospitals. And if you were to need airlifting home or something like that, that you're well covered for. Always have travel insurance, whether you're young, whether you have kids or not, whether, so this is something that I'm always going to get, whether I'm traveling for 5 days or whether I'm traveling for a month, because I know from personal experience how significant it's been, a lifesaver for me and my family. So if you're air traveling, ensure that you have some form of travel insurance on board. The last thing is, and I always say, there's no shame in asking. You just need to know who you need to ask. So if you're not sure about anything, you can always read, look at the frequently asked questions in an airline, approach the travel the crew, and they will always have like their badges well done. You can actually identify somebody, and don't ask. I tend not to ask other travelers. I just tend to ask, the crew members, I need this and this, what should I do? And I must say, like the time when we had a sick member on board, it was just easy to go to somebody and say, we are not feeling well, where should we go, and stuff like that. So very, very important when you're traveling, and even planning to travel, to always ask, because sometimes you may actually get small things like upgrades from asking. You may get extra luggage by just asking, what should I do? Is there a way, that I can get extra luggage as a student? Or is there any way that I can? There's no shame in asking. In fact, you open more opportunities and even more avenues for your travel. So if you're traveling by air, ensure that you consider these things. I'm sure there are many, many more things that I can talk about, but these are my top tips for air travel to ensure that you have a smooth sail and you go and come back safely. Thank you so much for watching, and comment, share, and thank you for being here. God bless.